I think it's the 22nd or the 23rd is the day before Zoma's.
It's almost the 22nd.
So his is the 21st, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's either the day before or the day after. I can never
Oh,
remember.
that's my brother's birthday. No wonder I like Regis so much.
I know. He's so adorable. All right, now I think I got Pal Talk back up. But now we're running live on YouTube. So it doesn't matter. So so glad to see you all. I'm turning the mic over to you, Dove and Karen and McKaylee and Bob and who all else is here? Sal and Sharon's phone is here. Um, let's see. And then me, of course, and Dove. So the mic is all yours.
Um, okay, I'll take the mic. Usually, Lorri starts off and Sharon follows. But I want to thank both Karen and Mikhail for offering to stand in for Lorri and for Sharon. And so I usually start with today's lesson, which I just put on the chat, lesson 226. My home awaits me. I will hasten there. And just read a little on it. Usually I have a little Ken Wapnick commentary. Couldn't find it right now. But if I so choose, I can depart this world entirely. It's not death that makes it possible, but a change of mind about the purpose. And as you know, my mantra lesson, lesson 25 says, purpose is meaning. And as Ken Wapnick says, only purpose in this world has any meaning. So we're either using the ego's purpose, which is, oh yeah, you'll leave this world sooner or later when you die, and I want to see you dead. Or we have Holy Spirit's purpose, which is to wake up from this dream of make believe. I guess it's a big make believe that I'm separate and apart, and I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. None of your business. You got to laugh. So purpose is really everything in this world. You're either listening to the voice that has no purpose whatsoever except to strive, survive, or die. Or you're listening to the voice that says nothing happened. You got to laugh. Don't take anything here seriously. Holy Spirit is always smiling. There's nothing not to smile about. I mean, only the light is real. You are the light. No, I'm also a body too. I got to feed the body, got to house the body. I'm sorry, Charlie, you're not a body. Anyway, that's it for me. How's that? I'm going to turn it on over to Karen and then Mikhail. Go ahead.
Thanks, Dove. Um, Welcome everybody. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy McKaylee came too. Um, yeah, strive, survive, and die. That's funny. That's kind of funny when you think about it. Always striving for something to survive, and then for what? To die. Right. Um, so I love Ken's commentary on this lesson. I'll save some if McKaylee wants to read it, but I just wanted to read the very first couple paragraphs that he wrote. First, he says that the lesson is 226. My home awaits me. I will hasten there. And when I think of that lesson, like my home awaits me, I think about when the Course says, love waits on welcome. So my home awaits me. God waits with welcome. It's just the resistance to wanting to go to the be in the love, be in the all with all, that keeps me from God, or wanting to be right rather than happy. And then I will hasten there. It reminds me in the Course in chapter 5 in the time and eternity, where he says delay is tragic in time. So the longer I wait to go home, the longer that I'm likely to suffer. So Ken says, the theme of this lesson is the mind's power to choose correctly, wherein we recognize we had chosen the wrong teacher, embracing the body's world as our home. Now we choose again and allow Jesus to lead us to our true home, where our Father's love awaits us. And I love how simple Ken keeps things. It's like, so it's always the mind's power to choose. And the course is, this is what this whole course is about, in my opinion. It's all about the power of decision, which is the one remaining freedom. And he also reminds us that it's the one remaining freedom as a prisoner of this world. So I'm either going to choose to see this world as a prison and believe that I am stuck in this body that is failing, that is aging, that is, you can just fill in the blanks. Or I can see it as a classroom to show me the lessons that I came here to learn, which is what I choose to do most of the time. I'm not going to lie that sometimes this body does feel like a prison, and that's when I have this kind of lesson where, my home awaits me. I will hasten there. I don't have to stay there. I can choose again. And the other quote that really came to me was where he talks about in I forget the name of the section, but it's in chapter 7, and he talks about how the power of the mind is the most powerful device that we were given. And it's the most powerful device that we were given. And the power to change our mind is the most powerful device that we were given. And we can do so in any moment. And so then Ken says, in other words, one does not leave this world by death. We have the illusion of leaving the body. But since it is only a projection of the mind's thoughts, we could not have been in the body in the first place. What enables us to leave this world, by which Jesus means to leave the world's thought system of separation, is to change from the teacher of illusion to the teacher of truth. And then he brings us a quote from chapter 3, section 7. The world is not left by death, but by truth. And truth can be known by all those for whom the kingdom was created and for whom it waits. So it's not what Dove said, what the ego says, it's not the striving, the surviving, and the dying. It's actually to be in the right mind and to remember the truth. And this is, like, I keep telling myself this because thoughts increase when they are shared. I keep telling myself that my only goal in this world is to listen more closely to the Holy Spirit. That's all I want to learn to do here, is to listen to the Holy Spirit. And Dove said purpose is meaning. And that reminds me that the only meaningful prayer here is for forgiveness, because I have to keep reminding myself that I already have everything. We already have everything. There is no lack. And I'm just so grateful for that. And I'm going to turn it over to McKaylee.
Thank you, Karen. And I also love today's lesson. My home awaits me. I will hasten there, lesson 226. And I really loved where you said, is it really either a classroom or a prison? And Ken has a whole workshop on that. I actually attended that one in Temecula. And, it's only a classroom if we look at it through forgiveness with right perception. And you can only have right perception when you have non-judgment. And the way that, on this commentary that Ken wrote, the way that we return home is through forgiveness. And I was listening to a talk yesterday on that Ken had given, and he had said that there's different everyone has different classrooms, but if the Course in Miracles you feel is your path, then it's through forgiveness. So everyone that decides that A Course in Miracles is their path, then we all have that classroom of forgiveness. And here, Ken wrote, I'm going to just read what he wrote on here on the commentary. He wrote, "This is our choice. We need realize this world is a place of vain desires and of shattered dreams. Nothing we aspire to will ever truly work, for the world cannot give us the peace we want. Yet Jesus does not ask us to change our world, but only our minds about our world." And he took that from chapter 21 in the text. "Any external change will thus be peaceful because it will have come from the mind's decision for peace. Such change occurs through forgiveness that transforms the special relationship into a holy one." So, it's through forgiveness, and it's interesting, those were some of the last words that Christ left with us. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And then on the end of Ken's commentary here, he wrote, "Thus do we return on forgiveness's wings into our Father's arms." So he wrote that forgiveness is like angelic wings, and that we go into our Father's arms, and that's where our home is. So why hasten here? Why wait here? So it's really through forgiveness, and again, right perception, which is releasing judgment. You have to release judgment, and that's really a big one that I'm working on every single day within the stream, is just releasing judgment, because I see how I've been conditioned from childhood, and it may have been something that I brought in with me here, that to judge. And I have to really be the witness and step back and look at it and observe it. So thank you. So I'll hand the mic over to maybe anyone else, you, Karen, Dove, or Mickey or Lynn, or let's see, we have Bob, Robert, Sal. Would anyone else like to comment?
Dov, do you want to share anything?
Okay, okay. I was hoping to hear from maybe someone else who's here. Robert, Sally, Mickey. Mickey, that was a great sharing yesterday. And thank you very much for making it easy for Sandy to do her clearing thing, and it seemed to be very helpful. And I think you've commented today. You're not quite sure yet, but everything happens perfectly in time. In time. I was looking for lesson 226 in Open Minds, which was our original Facebook group, Open Minds for ACIM and NTI, which we renamed about 6 months ago as ACIM Family, and hope you're all a member of that on Facebook, if you are on Facebook. I know some are not, but that's okay. I came across something because I just put the number 226 in, and because I did put the number 226 in, up came one of the moderators here a long time ago. She actually used to run the group. Her name is Ann Pecor. And in January of 2015, so that's 10 years ago, she didn't talk about lesson 226. She spoke about question 226. And if you're familiar with Ken Wapnick's uh, he, website, he has lots and lots of questions that are sent in, and actually, uh, those questions are really interesting because they they usually ask a question that we have ourselves, but as a matter of fact, we don't voice it. So if someone is voicing it for us, they send it into Ken, and he must have thousands of questions, and of course, you want to hear his answer. So I can't fit it all on here, but I'll put the question up. Here's the question. Why bother to do it if the little self is doing the workbook? And so there's a tendency to feel that I am the Holy Son of God. I'm talking about myself now. And Kent says, "Oh no, hardly, hardly. You are a shadow of the Holy Son of God." I haven't thought of myself as a shadow recently, so I thought I'd read a little of it. I can't put the whole thing up because it's so long, but I just want to give a taste of what Ken says on being living. Well, basically, the world is a shadow world. Let's start there. Uh, the world is not real; it's a dream, and I guess the figures in the dream are shadows. So he says the question is, if our lives are determined by a decision made outside of time and space, in other words, a choice about which teacher to listen to, then what is the sense of trying with our personality self to change anything? Why even do the workbook, as that's done with the little small self? I guess I'm asking, what role does the self I believe I am play in the big scheme of things? Here's Ken's answer. Hey, it's not as hopeless as all that. But the first thing you want to understand, even though it's not your experience, is that nothing is attempted or done by the self, capital S, in this world that we think we are. It's nothing but a shadow of thoughts in the mind. Everything is done by the mind. All power rests there. It's just that we have deceived ourselves about who we are. That's for sure. Every time you look in the mirror, that's a big deception. It's just that we've deceived ourselves about who we are, and so we think that we are the shadow rather than the light, without which there could be no shadow. So everything we find ourselves doing in the world is a shadow. The shadow knows. Remember that one, Lynn? I'm sure you do. The shadow knows. It was on the radio, not on TV. So most of the people in this room, maybe a few, I don't know, remember the shadow knows. So we are the shadow here. Uh, so everything we find ourselves doing in the world is a shadow or a projection of the choice we have made in our mind, often unconsciously, as to which teacher to listen to. And for a long time, since we don't know there is any teacher but the ego, even a choice for the ego is forgotten. And that, of course, has been the ego's goal, that we forget that we chose the wrong teacher. For now, we now seem to be mindless. Yep. If you don't remember that you chose listening to this squawk box, uh, you'll keep listening to the squawk box uh, until the day you say bye bye, squawk box. But you will be mindless, and that's the whole idea of this course, is to turn a mindless being into a mindful being. Mindful, big difference, mindless and mindful. Mindful is that you know you have a choice. Mindless, I have no choice but to listen to the squawk box. We believe we do our thinking with the brain, a masterful deception, which he talks about in workbook lesson number 92, paragraph 2. And there's no longer aware that we are no longer aware that we have a mind. And that's certainly true. So the mind that he's talking about is the mind that we share with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And that's not the mind that's between our ears. That's a mind that stands outside of the body. You can't fit the mind of spirit into the body. The body is in the mind, but the mind is not in the body. And if we don't know we have a mind, it's going to be a lot more difficult to change it, which of course is also the ego's goal. Consider the example you give of doing the workbook lessons. Oh, I'm doing so good here. I'm doing the workbook lessons. They're really not done by the self I think I am. My experience of reading and practicing them in the world is a reflection of a choice I have made in my mind, which has been projected out as behavior. There's a good word, behavior. There's nothing that Jesus talks about that has anything to do with behavior. Behavior performed by my illusory self in the world. All learning takes place in the mind. But while we're still too fearful to see ourselves as mind, we will continue to experience everything as being chosen and carried out by the little small self as we think we are in this world. What is helpful about our seeming experience in the world is that it can be used as a barometer to help us to recognize which teacher we have, in fact, turned to in our mind. The choice to do the workbook lessons made in the mind is in most cases a decision to turn away from the ego and to turn towards the Holy Spirit. So learning is going on. It's just that it's not my little small self that is, it's not my true self that here that is learning. That self is only, well, this thing doesn't have capital S and small s, so I'm getting a little confused in my own reading. But it's not that my small self here that is learning. That self is only ever an effect and never a cause of anything. But again, while our reality as mind is too fearful to accept, we will experience the learning as if it were happening on this plane by the little self we think we are. Just a few more lines. So by all means, continue to do the workbook lessons, practice forgiveness in the classrooms of your seeming life here. These are the opportunities Jesus is asking us to give to him so he can help us change our minds while we still think we are bodies until such time as guilt no longer has a hold on our minds and we no longer need the body and the personality self as a defense against the guilt. And with that, I'll wind it up and say, I hope there was some value there. Turning it back on over to you, Karen.
Thanks, Dov. Yeah, I love those reminders. Nothing is done by the capital S self in the world of shadows. And it's funny you mentioned that show. My uncle was just talking about that show yesterday. It's very weird. I don't remember, but he told me about it. Um, and you know, he also talked about deceiving ourselves. We're always deceiving ourselves, believing these thoughts, believing these shadows, believing that, there's nothing so blinding as perception of form. And it always reminds me where the Course says in chapter 10, section 2, the decision to forget that all attack is self-attack. And it stems from a decision to forget what you are. We're always forgetting what we are. We're forgetting the truth about who we are. And when I'm judging, I love what McKaylee brought up about judging. Judging is always a judgment against myself first. So that's one thing I have to really keep in mind. Every time I judge, I'm always judging myself first. All attack is self-attack. And then I love what you shared, Dove, about the Ken like teaches so wonderfully on the being mindless, how the ego wants to keep us mindless, forget that we have a mind, forget that we have a choice, and that is where our power lies. And so Ken would say, like, where he talks about early on in the text, I think it's in chapter 3, where he says that it's a journey without distance to a goal that has never changed. And I'm sure most of you have heard Ken say that is basically going from the mindless to the mindful. That is the journey without distance to the goal that has never changed. And this is what this lesson is saying. My home awaits me. I hasten there. I never left home. I'm dreaming of exile here. I never left home. I just decided that I wanted to be separate. I wanted to be Karen for a while. But I also wanted to mention when McKaylee mentioned about judgment, which is so important. The manual for teachers um, in the characteristics, it's all about non-judgment. All of the characteristics are about non-judgment. And real specifically, a lot of it is intolerance. And it's the tolerance not to judge, the tolerance to listen to the Holy Spirit, the tolerance, not to be tempted by the shadows that Dove was talking about. And in this characteristic, he says, God's teachers do not judge. And he mentions that in the course in another place where we cannot judge. We cannot judge because we don't know. We don't know what anything is for, number one, and we cannot see the whole picture here, as though we're sharing here, in this plane, we're in time and space, which is linear time. We can't know anything. We see, we see something that's not even there. So we just don't know the whole story. The Holy Spirit is the only way outside of time that we can get the true answer. So he says, to judge is to be dishonest. For to judge is to assume a position you do not have, to assume that I know. Judgment without self-deception is impossible. So I have forgotten who I am. Judgment implies that you have been deceived in your brothers. How then could you not have been deceived in yourself? I'm attacking myself first. I'm not seeing that I am a holy son of God. I am perfect, whole, and complete. If I can't see that, how can I see that in my brother? My brother is my reflection. And when I can see it in my brother, and I think I heard someone share it recently, which was so beautiful, that the way that we recognize the truth of who we are is when we remind our brothers. When we remind our brothers of the truth, we're reminding ourselves. We're just sharing, like the thought that is shared will increase. But when we remind our brothers of the truth of who they are, we're reminding ourselves always. So judgment implies a lack of trust, and trust remains the bedrock of the teacher of God's whole thought system. So I'm not trusting in the Holy Spirit when I'm judging. I'm thinking that I know. And that's why I love that lesson 25. I do not know what anything is for. Let this be lost, and all learning goes. Without judgment are all things equally acceptable. For who could judge otherwise? Without judgment are all men brothers. For who is there who stands apart? Judgment destroys honesty and shatters trust. No teacher of God can judge and hope to learn. So I'm so glad that McKaylee brought that up, because as long as we're here in form, our classroom, for me anyway, I'm going to speak for my own classroom. I When I judge, that is my classroom. My classroom is to that the Holy Spirit is my teacher, to ask the Holy Spirit to help me see this differently, because I am judging amiss. I am judging by form. I am judging by interpretation. Help me and show me your interpretation. Show me the truth. The other thing that I wanted to share in this lesson, in paragraph 1, we didn't share sentences 3 to 5. I want to read that, and Ken's commentary on that is also really good. So in paragraph 1, sentences 3 to 5, if I believe it has a value as I see it now, and he's talking about the purpose of the world. If I believe that it has a value as I see it now, so will it remain for me. But if I see no value in the world as I behold it, nothing that I want to keep as mine or search for as a goal, it will depart from me. So I have no attachment. For I have not sought for illusions to replace truth. So when I don't value the valueless, that, the valueless is, I know Dove shares this a lot, the valueless is really anything of this world that doesn't last. The valuable is only what is eternal. So the valueless is listening to the ego thought system, and the valuable is listening to the Holy Spirit thought system. So Ken says, this undoes our mistake of seeking illusions to take the place of truth. We again see the importance of recognizing the difference between the valuable and valueless. The ego thought system and the world that arose from it are valueless. Jesus's thought system alone is valuable. As we go through our day, tempted by grievances and feelings of ingratitude and specialness, we need realize these thoughts have no value, for they do not bring the peace and happiness we want. Only giving up the valueless earns us the joyful gift of truth. And then he says, he mentions from Manual for Teachers, section 4, which is from the characteristics, and it's from the trust, the very first one. Where he anticipated grief, he finds a happy lightheartedness instead. Where he thought something was asked of him, he finds a gift bestowed on him. So it can only bring us joy. It can only bring us peace. And it also reminds me where he says, how can you find joy in a joyless place? You leave. You leave. You recognize that you're not there. You recognize that you don't really live there. That this is not your home. My home awaits me. I will hasten there. My real home is with God. But how do you leave a joyless place? You recognize that you're not here. So really recognizing what Doug was sharing about the shadows, recognizing the valuelessness of the ego thought system, we're able to change our mind and hasten to the world that we want, to the home that we want. And I am so grateful for that. I just want to share an experience I had yesterday with my uncle. He went for a walk yesterday, and I noticed how I was being a little bit short with him, and because he can be annoying at times. He's been my greatest teacher, and I was being a little bit short with him, and I recognized what I was doing in the moment, but I didn't really care. And he just laughs, So I walked away, and I had my earbuds in, and I was walking. And then when I got upstairs, I thought about it. I thought about how I was short with him, and how, this holy instant is all there is. And I wasn't being in the moment with him. And I recognized that. What I was doing was I was wanting to get away from the moment and get away from him and go somewhere else. And that is not being in the holy instant. That is not being in the present moment. And it's not a sin. it's just something to be mindful of. So anyway, I decided not to apologize because I didn't do anything wrong. I decided not to feel guilty because there's nothing to feel guilty about. I decided that I can choose again in this moment. That's the other thing about forgiveness. Forgiveness, we change our mind. We catch those thoughts. We catch the mistake, but it's not always, we're not always able to do it in that moment. So what I was hearing from Spirit was just call him, and just tell him, and I was something positive. I don't have to go into details, but I just called him to tell him something positive that I really loved about him and how amazing he is, basically is what I said to him. And that was it, and it was just, that's, that can, the holy instant can be every instant we want it to be. And the good thing for me today about that is I notice when I leave the holy instant and I don't feel good. It doesn't make me feel good. So why do we do it? Why do we judge? Why do we do these things? Why do we go to the shadows? As McKaylee said, it's conditioned and we're undoing through forgiveness. Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to McKaylee.
Thank you, Karen. That was a beautiful sharing. And thank you on the sharing with your uncle, and that you were able to bring forgiveness in there, and then right perception and non-judgment. So that was really beautiful. I myself, I'm here in California right now. I drove out yesterday because, we don't know what anything is for. So last week I lost my little dog of 15 years. It was kind of like my best friend, my companion. And, life is so interesting in the divine timing of everything. So my oldest son called me and said, Mom, I when are you going to come get our cat? They have a hairless cat. So it's interesting. Yeah, it has no hair. It's actually, he says it's Egyptian lynx. And so I drove out yesterday to come get the cat, and it's because my daughter-in-law, uh, when the cat licks her, she gets like hives, blisters on it. So we don't know what anything is for, divine timing. And life is compassionate, empathetic, and here I received another gift yesterday, and even though I had grief last week, but there's a beautiful gift. So I've got this beautiful hairless cat in my lap right now who slept with me. Oh my gosh, he slept with me. My arm was around him all night. It was so sweet. Loved it. And he's purring. It's so healing. It's so wonderful. So yeah, we just don't know what anything is for. And we have to constantly forgive and ask for, step back and look at it. And then it was so cute. They were here last night for dinner, and to give me the cat. So we went out back, and Maddie, my daughter-in-law, said, "Okay, I want to take a group family picture." So she put the picture, this thing you stick on the window, and then her phone's on the window. So instead of saying cheese, she had us all say, "Maddie's pregnant now." And my mouth like dropped open. So that's how she announced that she's pregnant. So I have another gift. So my oldest son is going to have a baby, and Maddie, my daughter-in-law. So it's a beautiful gift. Uh, so yeah, I'm really working on, that's, I think, one of my biggest lessons that I brought in here in my classroom, and not to make it a prison, is on non-judgment. And I love how Ken brought in the lesson today, lesson 226, he brought up chapter 21, which is on reason and perception. So I'd like to read from that. The second paragraph has a lot to do on judgment, but I'm going to go and start on the first one first, which is the introduction. Projection makes perception. The world you see is what you gave it, nothing more than that. But though it is no more than that, it is not less. Therefore, to you it is important. It is the witness to your state of mind, the outside picture of an inward condition. As a man thinketh, so does he perceive. Therefore, seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world. Perception is a result and not a cause, and that is why order of difficulty in miracles is meaningless. Everything looked upon with vision is healed and holy. Nothing perceived without it means anything. And where there is no meaning, there is chaos. Damnation is your judgment on yourself. So here, of course, Jesus is saying that damnation is our judgment on ourselves, and this you will project upon the world. See it as damned, and all you see is what you did to hurt the Son of God. If you behold disaster and catastrophe, you tried to crucify him. If you see holiness and hope, you join the will of God to set him free. There is no choice that lies between these two decisions, and you will see the witness to the choice you made and learn from this to recognize which one you chose. The world you see but shows you how much joy you have allowed yourself to see in you and to accept as yours. And if this is its meaning, then the power to give it joy must lie within you. So I love where the Course, where Jesus says, the world you see but shows you how much joy you have allowed yourself to see in you and accept as yours. So it's really is an outside picture of an inward condition. And if we don't see with right perception and non-judgment and through the eyes of forgiveness, then we have no joy really inside ourselves. That's what we're seeing out there. And then it's a world of sadness, of tears. So, yeah. So I wrote here a little on the in my own handwriting on the Course. Then when people see you, they only see Jesus. So I wrote that from I had been following Ken's class on the text, going through the text, and so he must have wrote that, said that in the class, that you want it that when people see you, they only see Jesus. So they see that, which that is non-judgment, and that's what's healing. And so that's through the eyes of forgiveness. So, and right perception. So would anyone else like to comment? Hand the mic over to someone else.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Michaela. And that's such a powerful section. I quote it almost all the time. First of all, projection makes perception. I always say, why did he put it up in chapter 21? It belongs in chapter 1. Somebody once said, it is there, but you just didn't see it until chapter 21, which is true, And chapter 21, section 2 is probably the most powerful thing that you can read in the Course, as far as I'm concerned. It says responsibility for sight. And basically it says, I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve, and everything, keyword is everything, that serves, that seems, I'm sorry, and everything that seems to happen to me, I have asked for, and I have received as I have asked. And those words are all in italics on page 240, excuse me, on page 448. The next couple sentences are not in italics, but I love them because they are so true. This is what he says. Deceive yourself no longer. So this whole world is really a deception. Not only is it a deception in that ego shows you everything that doesn't mean anything, in other words, form, and form is meaningless because you're formless, you're spirit, and if you make things out of form, lesson 1 and 2 is exactly what he's talking about. No form means anything. In case you think it means something, go on to lesson 2. I'm the one that gives all form meaning, and that's what the ego loves, is to give form meaning so that your mind is in a prison lockdown, exactly what Karen said earlier. So I'm just going to read the next couple lines. Deceive yourself no longer that you're helpless in face of what is done to you. So everyone says, well, I'm a victim here. Why is this happening to me? Acknowledge that you have been mistaken. It's a mistake. It's not a sin. And all effects of your mistakes will disappear. So it's asking you to tell the truth. You're not a victim. You're doing this to yourself. Isn't that the secret of salvation? I'm doing this to myself. Yeah. So that brings up something that Karen started off at the very beginning. She mentioned that this world is like a prison. It's a prison of the mind. You can't seem to leave this prison. And again, I'm going to mention if you're not a member of ACIM family on Facebook, please join, because if you go to the search, there's a magnifying glass, and say you put in like today's lesson. What is today's lesson? 226. Okay. So I found question 226, which comes from Ken Wapnick. He has hundreds of questions and answers. I'm not sure that it's still on his website. I'm not sure. It used to be on his website. But if you go there, you will find anything and everything that has to do with that lesson for that day that people have commented on for years and years, maybe since the year 2010. So that's 15 years ago. And I found something which I put up here on the board just a little while ago. And the author of that was our own Lynn Johnson. And this is what she said. She gives Nathan Healy, who used to be one of the in the days before Lynn made us a 24/7 group, which meant that the radio is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We used to go off the air at around 10, 11 o'clock at night. And Nathan Healy and his wife, who comes from New Zealand, of course, there it's daytime when it's nighttime here, took over ACM Gather from midnight to about 8 in the morning. So they were on for 6, 7, 8 hours every night. And this went on for maybe a year or more. That was very kind of them to do that. So this quote that I'm quoting here, which I think I put on the board twice, but I'll put it on again just as we're reading it. To say that Adam and Eve knew that they were naked and ashamed, to say that Adam and Eve knew that they were naked and ashamed is to say they became aware that they had bodies. Huh? They were arrested, using Jesus' idea of the word arrested. In a limited body, in other words, they became arrested as to become limited, frozen, you might say, in time. They were frozen in a limited body in a prison cell, limited in time and space, in solitary confinement. That kind of reminds me of one of my old sayings. Yeah, I find myself serving a prison sentence, serving a life sentence, in solitary confinement. That's right. Serving a life sentence on death row. On death row. Yeah, you're on death row. And that was posted by Lynn Holmes Johnson and Nathan Healy. So I encourage people to go to ACIM Family, which is one of our two groups. ACM Gather for A Course in Miracles is one that was dedicated to ACM Gather, but originally I had Open Minds, which really came, and Open Minds has over 31,000 members. So there's just a lot of variety there. It's all very course oriented. Dakini Weil, who is kind of co-running it, brought a lot of new life in it, but she was very clear. I only want course material on this. And if it's not course material, it could be deleted. It could be deleted. So with that, I'm going to say, oh, I see Mickey's hand is up. Mickey, go ahead.
I am so excited about you putting up that quote from Lynn. That's awesome. Uh, and and that's something that came to me a while ago when thinking about that whole Adam and Eve story. And one of the things that a lot of people who are into the Bible bring up all the time, and there's something that they leave out that always gets me. And they say that, God said you can't eat from the tree of knowledge. You can eat from all these other things, but just don't eat from the tree of knowledge. And we all know about the snake and the apple and all of that. And what they leave out all the time, and I'm just starting to read the Bible with a friend of mine who's a minister. Uh, so I am not a Bible scholar by any stretch of the imagination. But I seem to remember that it says you cannot eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And I'm like, do they not get what this is talking about? The knowledge of good and evil is the knowledge that there can be duality, that there are opposites, that there is good and there is evil. And whenever anybody talks about the apple and the snake and the whole thing, I'm like, do you not get it? There's black and white. There's good and evil. They're talking about duality. Before that, there was only oneness. That there were no opposites. And that's always, and whenever I hear about Adam and Eve or anything about the snake or the apple, I'm like, you missed the point. You didn't get it. The Bible, from the get-go, in that very first story in Genesis, is talking about you were one before this. And the whole, what's the word I'm looking for? Analogy, that whole story is all about you fell out of oneness. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you for that quote. Thanks for reminding me of that little thing that I think about all the time when people talk about the Bible. If you didn't get it from the first story in the book of Genesis, you're misreading the entire Bible. Anyway, I will get off my soapbox and hand it over to somebody else.
Oh, thank you, Mickey. I'm just going to pick up here. Yeah, since Regis is not here, I'm going to say what Regis would say when God came to the garden and Adam and Eve were hiding, and he said, "Why are you hiding?" And they said, "Because we are naked." And God said, "Who told you you're naked? Who told you you were naked?" That should be the first clue right there. And some people think there were two trees, one a tree of good and evil, knowledge of good and evil, and one a tree of life and death, the knowledge of life and death. But it's the same thing. It's the knowledge of good and evil, life and death. It's the same thing, duality. So thank you, Mickey. Anybody else have anything to say before we turn over to Zoma? And I'm glad you're here, Zoma, today.
Just want to say Ken Wapnick is absolutely certain that the Bible is written by the ego, period.
Oh yeah, that is without a doubt. But so was A Course in Miracles. When you think about it, this was not some divine hand that came into the world and handed us a book. There was a human being that was involved in the listening and interpreting and turning it into Shakespearean uh, language. Uh, it's all the ego. That, I mean, that's what we were talking about yesterday. Who in the heck is he talking to? Who is it? Who is the person that is studying this Course in Miracles? Because it's not the Holy Spirit for sure. Holy Spirit doesn't need it, but it could be the ego, because that's the only other thing that could be. So anyway, thanks you guys so very much. I appreciate you. Thankful Thursday. Wouldn't be thankful without you. Uh, well, I'd be thankful anyway. So I'm going to stop this YouTube. And if you're listening on the YouTube, please click the like and also subscribe to us, so we can know, who's out there, and you get reminders